This is a continuation of a two-part video series in which I'm going to compare the most popular strategic planning frameworks used in corporate America today. In the first video, we looked at the pros and cons of SWOT Matrix Analysis, industry best practices, and PEST. In part 2, we will look at Balanced Scorecard and Blue Ocean. If you are serious about learning about these strategic planning tools because you want to develop your own strategic plan, then this video is for you. Transforming your business from struggling to success and from success to significance. There are many strategic planning frameworks to choose from, but if you're looking to create your own strategic plan, most of them are probably not what you're looking for. As I mentioned in part 1, many of these strategic planning frameworks are developed by those in academia or the management consulting industry, sometimes both. In order to make a name for themselves, they are always looking to create something new and different and hopefully better. But at a minimum, new and different in order to write their book or PhD thesis. So there will always be new tools being developed. In this video, I'm going to give an overview of the most popular strategic planning frameworks used and talked about in corporate America today. In part 1, I gave the pros and cons of SWOT Matrix Analysis, excellent execution of industry best practices, and PEST. Although I gave a caveat that industry best practices is not considered a formal strategic planning framework by business schools. But perhaps it should be. Perhaps that should be my PhD thesis or next book. Just joking. In part 2 of this video, we will continue to look at two of the most popular strategic planning frameworks today, Balanced Scorecard and Blue Ocean, as well as reference a few honorable mentions that you may want to study if you're looking to do an in-depth research on this subject. So, Balanced Scorecard. The origins of Balanced Scorecard are often credited to Robin Kaplan and David Norton, who wrote the book Balanced Scorecard: Translating Strategy into Action in 1996. However, Kaplan acknowledges working with Arthur Schneiderman of Analog Devices in the early 90s on an unrelated study where Schneiderman shared his performance measurement scorecard. But it wasn't until the release of the Kaplan and Norton book that the concept for Balanced Scorecard entered the mainstream in strategic planning circles. The first generation Balanced Scorecard served as a performance management tool to monitor the implementation of a strategic plan. It was not intended to define strategic initiatives or goals, but meant to track the implementation of a plan by defining measures and targets that would indicate progress and success. These performance metrics are also known as Key Performance Indicators, or KPIs. Design of a balanced scorecard is about identification of a small number of financial and non-financial measures and attaching targets to them so that when they are reviewed, it is possible to determine whether the current performance of the project and team met the expectations of each strategic goal. The goals are assigned to individuals or groups, and their performance is measured and tracked. The first generation Balanced Scorecard identified 4 perspectives and 4 basic questions to track the implementation of the strategy. These 4 perspectives and associated questions are: financial, how do we look to shareholders? 2, customer, how do customers see us? 3, internal business processes, what must we excel at? And 4, learning and growth, can we continue to improve and create value? Note that one perspective is financial in nature, the other 3 are non-financial. 3 of the perspectives are internally focused, one is externally focused. Therefore, one of the strengths of Balanced Scorecard is that it keeps you from making your strategic goals entirely financial by forcing you to look at non-financial goals, your employees, your community, etc. This is designed to ensure you have a holistic and balanced strategy, hence the name of the scorecard. However, KPIs and performance metrics are also used in project plans such as Microsoft Project, which means you don't need to use Balanced Scorecard to have a project plan or schedule that includes start and end dates, milestones, KPIs, responsible people, etc. for your strategic plan. Second and third generation Balanced Scorecards were based upon creation of strategy maps, which included a linkage model to visually map individual strategic goals within each of the 4 perspectives to strategic goals in the other perspectives. For example, in the learning and growth perspective, one strategic goal might be to improve skill level of employees. In order to accomplish this, there might be another strategic goal in the internal business processes perspective called Create Career Training Ladder. The linkage between these 2 strategic goals shows how these separate goals are tied together and must be done together in order to achieve the end result. However, a balanced scorecard does not look at a company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats. In fact, they become irrelevant, which is a startling contrast to SWOT. Balanced Scorecard works on management by goal setting. Simply set the strategic goals you want to achieve and establish KPIs to track and measure your progress with your strategic goals. Like PEST, Balanced Scorecard ignores the Pareto principle and assumes all your ideas with strategic goals have an equal chance of working, and once successfully implemented, will have an equal positive impact on your bottom line. However, if management by goal setting worked every time and worked that well, and all projects were both successful and impacted your bottom line, you wouldn't need to develop any strategic plans or even watch this video. Simply perform management by goal setting as part of your daily management activities and you would always be successful. But we both know that doesn't work. Additionally, while the SWOT Matrix Analysis provides a top-down approach to determine strategic initiatives that have the greatest chance of getting you towards your financial goals, Balanced Scorecard works on a bottoms-up approach to picking strategic goals you believe should be addressed while assuming that the successful completion of those goals will get you to your destination. In other words, if every one of your projects was successfully completed, then you must have arrived at your destination. However, in the real world, you can successfully complete a project or strategic goal and find out that you still did not get to your destination. You still haven't achieved the revenue or vision you had for your company. So what are the pros and cons of Balanced Scorecard? On the pro side, they were originally created to be a tool to measure successful implementation of your plan, not to be a tool to create a strategic plan. It works well with other frameworks such as SWOT. In fact, see the Excel spreadsheet schedule referenced in the book Strategic Planning for Kingdom Businesses, for example. Since you don't have to spend time looking at where you are, where you are going, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats, and can simply pick from a group of generic strategic goals, a strategic plan can be developed quicker using Balanced Scorecard than any other framework, especially if you're using a third-generation software tool. So what are the cons? Well, with 4 areas and the principle of having no more than 5 strategic initiatives in any strategic plan, because nobody can handle that many, you can have no more than 2 initiatives in any of the 4 perspectives. This forces a distribution of your initiatives, whereas most companies tend to have more strategic goals that are primarily focused on financial goals. Balanced Scorecard doesn't look at strengths or weaknesses. In fact, they become irrelevant. There's no structured approach to look at opportunities and threats. The structure is in the selection of the individual strategic goals. Balanced Scorecard provides management by goal setting and not strategic planning, my opinion. Even in the third-generation versions, it provides a bottoms-up approach to strategic planning and not a top-down approach, whereas strategic planning by definition is a top-down approach on how to get from where you are to where you want to be in a certain amount of time. Balanced Scorecard can successfully meet the individual goals without achieving your vision. For example, you ran your play successfully, but you still didn't get the ball into the end zone. And then there's Blue Ocean. While SWOT Matrix Analysis and Balanced Scorecard are the 2 most implemented strategic planning frameworks used by corporate America today, a framework that is highly discussed and praised far more than its implement, if that makes any sense, is Blue Ocean. The reason for that paradox will be explained. Blue Ocean was developed by W. Chan Kim and Renee Marburg and described in their 2004 book, Blue Ocean Strategy, and in their follow-up 2017 book, Blue Ocean Shift. However, Blue Ocean is more of a descriptive theory or case study on how some companies have succeeded and not a prescriptive strategy framework. I'll explain the subtle differences between descriptive and prescriptive, but this also explains why there are no diagrams to explain the frame. In order to understand the concept of a blue ocean, you first must understand a red ocean. Red oceans are defined as the competitive environment that almost every company operates in. Just look around you. You and your competitors are already in a red ocean. According to the authors, competing in this environment is predicated on choosing to compete through A, differentiation, or B, low cost. Since all companies will eventually copy each other's success, differentiation eventually leads to companies being forced to compete on cost, thus making your products and services a commodity. The way to avoid this red ocean paradigm is what they refer to as value innovation, the simultaneous pursuit of differentiation and cost reduction. This causes a company to stop looking at their competitors and start looking for unexplored new market areas, which they refer to as blue oceans. When you are operating in a blue ocean, your competition becomes irrelevant since you are all alone in your blue ocean. You are the pace setter. However, somewhat paradoxical, the authors also admit that all blue oceans eventually become red oceans, since no matter how successful you are, eventually other companies will follow in your path and imitate you. Therefore, it's not enough to find one blue ocean. You must continually look for blue oceans to distinguish yourself, since the competition is only irrelevant while you are all alone in your blue ocean. Once the competition follows you into the blue ocean, they start to become relevant again. But blue oceans are defined by untapped market space, demand creation, and the opportunity for highly profitable growth. Market boundaries and industry structure are not considered to be fixed, but can be moved and restructured at any time. Great theory. According to the book, although some blue oceans are created well beyond existing industry boundaries, most are created within red oceans by expanding existing boundaries. So they say. Cirque du Soleil is given as an example of a success using a blue ocean strategy. At a high level, this concept sounds great and is hard to refute. Who wouldn't want to find a blue ocean and create new rules for operating in your own environment? Who wouldn't want to become so successful that most of your competitors left the industry or imitated you to a lesser extent? What CEO wouldn't want to be so innovative that the leading business school were studying your success for the next 3 decades? But let's take a closer look at the strategy and see how easy or practical it would be to implement this strategy in your company. In the books, there are several companies that have been touted as becoming successful using the blue ocean concept. Some of these include Nintendo, Cirque du Soleil, Uber, and Airbnb. Of those 4 companies, I would argue that the only company that implemented the blue ocean concept was Nintendo. Why? Of these 4 companies, it's the only company that operated and competed in the industry previously. Cirque du Soleil was never in the circus business, Uber was never in the taxi business, and Airbnb was never in the hotel industry. Although these companies are great success stories, they were startup companies that transformed industries by implementing a new business model. It would have been much harder for them to have accomplished what they did if they were already in their respective industries. It might seem like I'm splitting hairs here, but let's look at this from a CEO perspective, your perspective. What if you were the CEO of Ringling Brothers Circus, or a large taxi cab company, or a large hotel conglomerate, and you had the same idea that Cirque du Soleil, Uber, and Airbnb had? Could you have successfully implemented their ideas and retained your existing business? If you had a circus, you would have to get rid of all of your animals and pretty much everyone else, including the trains and hire stage performers from the theater industry. If you had a taxi business, you would have to get rid of all your cabs, cab drivers, and garages, since you would no longer be in the taxi business. You now provide a ride-sharing technology application, which explained how they avoided so many lawsuits. If you were in the hotel industry, you would either get rid of your hotels or start to sell the rooms through an Uber-like application that would compete with and draw business away from your existing hotels. My point is that it is much easier to think outside the box and create blue ocean strategies for a startup company that has never competed in a red ocean than it is for an existing company like yours to implement a blue ocean strategy. I've worked with many Fortune 500 companies doing business process transformation. Due to their legacy systems and processes, it is often very challenging to implement new systems and processes. It is much easier to do something different when it's never been done before. The book promotes the concept that the only way you can truly differentiate yourself from your competitor is to create new markets and move industry infrastructures. In other words, innovation is seen as something very different from what your competitors are doing. As I explained in the Excellent Execution of Best Practices framework in Part 1, if that was the only way to differentiate yourself from your competitors, then Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Bill Gates, and the McDonald brothers would never have differentiated themselves. My final criticism of their concept is the paradox that the only way to differentiate yourself from your competitors is to find blue oceans, especially since by their own admission, all blue oceans eventually turn red. Therefore, unless you are currently finding new blue oceans, which are difficult or impossible to find, wouldn't you need to learn to compete in a red ocean anyway? If so, then you might as well learn to compete in your red ocean now. After reading their books, if you can find a way to implement their blue ocean strategy in your business, you should become very successful. On the other hand, if after reading their books, you find yourself scratching your head because you can't figure out how to implement their concept in your company, don't be surprised. You are in good company. You aren't the only one struggling with that challenge. So what are the pros and cons of blue ocean? On the pro side, It's a very good descriptive concept that explains how some companies have not only been successful, but have transformed existing industries, like Uber. It's great out-of-the-box thinking that has the potential to disrupt and transform an entire industry. What are the cons? Well, it's much easier for a startup company to implement Blue Ocean than a well-established company already in the industry. It always requires a major change to one's business model, which is something that most companies try not to change when they do their strategic plan. It assumes that if everyone is doing the same thing, they must be doing it equally well, which is definitely not a true statement, and I've made that in many of the videos I've done. Blue Ocean is more descriptive of how some companies have achieved success than a strategy framework for how to implement a framework to achieve similar success. There are relatively few success stories from companies like Nintendo, who are already competing in the electronic gaming industry with Microsoft and Sony. Most examples come from companies that were outside their respective industry, like Cirque du Soleil, Uber, and Airbnb. There you have it: SWOT, PEST, Balanced Scorecard, and Blue Ocean. These are the most widely utilized and talked about strategy frameworks in corporate America today. For those looking to study more on the subject, other popular frameworks include Growth Share Matrix, Scenario Planning, and Porter 5 Forces. As I mentioned previously, the two that I always recommend for companies looking to develop their own strategic plan are SWOT Matrix Analysis and Excellent Execution of Industry Best Practices. In summary, strategic planning is the process of determining where you want your company to be in the future and then developing a detailed plan on how to get there in 3 to 5 years. There are various tools or frameworks out there available for developing your strategic plan. We looked at the top 4 frameworks used in corporate America today, and I explained why I recommend the SWOT Matrix Analysis and Excellent Execution of Industry Best Practices to all my clients who are looking to create their own strategic plan. Remember, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. If you want to go somewhere where you have never been before, you need a strategic plan that will force you to do different things and things differently than you're currently doing. A good strategic plan will help you decide which things you need to do that will give you the greatest chance of getting the ball in the end zone in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of additional resources. If this video has been of some help to you, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. If there are any other topics you'd like to see discussed relating to strategic planning, please let me know. Until then, be blessed and keep doing business His way.